Let's begin with a quick overview of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. Now, back in week 2, we examined the ways in which effectively exercising patience and kindness requires us to listen attentively and closely observe our significant others so that we know them well. We're much more likely to be patient if we can anticipate certain patterns of behavior, and less likely to fall on our faces in attempts to be kind if we have been updated on our beloved's changing needs. In week 3, we considered how envy and boasting both involve objectification of another person, reducing them to a thing to be won and used, or an adversary to be defeated, instead of embracing them as a partner alongside whom we can love, work, and play. Now, it's theoretically possible to be both kind and patient, qualities which rest in part on knowledge of another person, and to effectively work as a teammate without displaying envy or active boasting, and yet still avoid respecting another person. The rudeness and pride which the Apostle Paul goes on to warn against next can spring up rather quickly if we have not learned to value those unique characteristics in our beloved that we have tracked and categorized. There's a big difference between putting up with someone, of knowing how to handle all their surprising habits and quirks, and genuinely valuing those characteristics as rich additions to your relationship. At the same time, then, that we should aspire to oneness, it's important that we validate not only our own uniqueness, but that of our beloved. This is incredibly hard to do because none of us can transplant ourselves into the mind and body of our partner, and it would be incredibly weird and distressing if we could. A failure to even try, however, to attempt to add appreciation to understanding constitutes a potentially catastrophic oversight we would do well to avoid. I'm Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt with the fourth entry in a series I'm calling Beyond the Honeymoon, Romance 101. Today's talk is entitled, Don't Put Up, Shut Up. Embracing each person's distinctiveness is something that the progressive elements of our postmodern culture rightly emphasize. Attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion seeks to redress centuries of mistreatment by ensuring that freedoms of expression, mobility, and professional advancement are available to the historically disenfranchised, regardless of their identity markers. Everyone deserves to be heard and valued. If our unique sense of identity begins to require a demonized other, however, matters have gone sideways. Isn't it sad that so many of us can only know ourselves, feel like we know who we are, by identifying and scorning someone that we do not resemble? Cheering for the home team creates a sense of community and camaraderie, but must we boo the opposition? And can't we support a political candidate without pretending that every little thing that is said and done by her rival is evil? When healthy self-confidence degenerates into single-minded pride, our beloved is likely to get flattened too into someone who is either expected to always agree with us or who, by disagreeing too frequently, becomes the enemy. Jesus modeled the kind of life he advocated in his teachings by hanging out with all kinds of social pariahs, tax collectors, working class women who were considered second-class citizens in that culture, prostitutes, people with disabilities whose disabilities he always cured because they asked him to. He did not ignore people's problems, but addressed their issues with love and the appropriate timing. Differences of opinion, radically different lifestyles did not form barriers to interaction. We also have St. Peter's claim that we should love deeply because, quote, love covers over a multitude of sins, a picture of communal love which assumes that we all screw up regularly and thus should approach one another with humility. The Apostle Paul provides yet another picture, the metaphor of the church as the body with Christ as its head, which encourages us to accept people's differences, particularly their proclivities when it comes to various talents and roles and their leanings. The difficulty, the challenge, lies in distinguishing between what we should encourage and what we should question in our beloved. Because yes, in every committed relationship, there are going to be times, hopefully rare, where it is a good idea to humbly, with great timing, judiciously suggest an alternative course of action. In The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis argues that a refusal to love in this proactive way is tantamount to indifference. This doesn't mean we should nag. Definitely not. I think maybe we should encourage liberally and offer counsel sparingly, particularly in a romantic relationship. There is usually so much more we can learn to validate and celebrate in our beloved, things that at first glance might seem outlandish and even wrong, because first and foremost, we see morality through our own narrow perspective. It's too easy to say, it's my way or the highway to hell. If we have a well-developed personality, according to the Myers-Briggs type inventory or the Enneagram personality test, which is really popular these days, it can be incredibly difficult to value someone else's different approach to an issue that we care a lot about. Take racial inequality, for instance. I think we should work hard to change the equation when it comes to matters of representation in film. Screenwriters could be more colorblind when the scenario they're concocting doesn't have anything to do with race. And film companies could do a better job hiring people of color to stand both in front of and behind the camera. You think it more important to start earlier, to champion children's books starring characters of color, and to ensure that the libraries and classrooms of our elementary schools are well stocked with and visibly display such books. She believes change requires us to apply pressure politically and throws her energy into public protests, marches, and writing essays to newspapers and congresspeople. He thinks we should throw our resources behind affirmative action measures to help move toward equity in higher education and the workplace. And all four of us feel very strongly that whatever the possible merits of these other measures, our own agenda is the most important at this critical moment in history. So instead of honoring the paths of others and starting from an assumption that they have the best motives, we can allow our energies to be siphoned off into squabbles that waste our resources. This can effectively hamstring a relationship and each of the partners' efforts to love outside the relationship in a tangible and meaningful way. When it comes to practicing various virtues like love itself and gentleness and self-control, it's short-sighted to assume that what we see as a path forward must be the appropriate choice for our partner. Instead, I recommend that we recall that whack-a-mole game back from Chuck E. Cheese we encountered years ago and bop arrogance on the head whenever it tries to spring up and trip up our efforts to do good in the world and in our relationship.